one thing I think about a lot is right around the time I came out, which is like a terrifying thing to do as a like elected official in Indiana, right?
This was after you got back from Afghanistan.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. It was after
What
I got
happened? What did you eat out there?
No, honestly, what happened was, when you get deployed, they tell you to write a letter. And I still have it in a drawer somewhere. And it's the letter, it just says just in case on the outside.
Wow.
And it's everything that you want your loved ones to know, from your internet passwords to like how you feel your life went, right? Everybody should do this, by the way. You shouldn't have to like wait to be sent to war to do this.
Yeah.
And I was the sitting mayor of my hometown because I was a reservist. So I got deployed while I was in office, and I just took a leave, stopped being mayor, started being lieutenant, and went into my other job, basically. So I was the sitting mayor of my hometown. I had a beautiful house. I had good friends. I had like a good life. And that was part of what I wrote about in that letter. But in the back of my head, I'm thinking, all right, but I'm a grown-ass man in a position of responsibility. And I don't actually know what it's like to be in love. And if I get back, I'm not going to let that continue. Like whatever the implications, I'd rather deal with that than once again contemplate the idea that I could go to my grave not knowing what it's like to be in love. So then, it was awkward timing because it's actually the middle of a re-election. But I took some time, like I took months to think through, okay, how do I do this? How do I say this? Like, what is that? And then one day I did it. I wrote a little op-ed in the local paper. I said, I don't think this should be anybody's business, but I know it's a thing. Here's something you should know about me. And it was fine. I mean, it wasn't fine. There were,
people upset.
There was some ugliness around it, but like, nothing ever happened that made me regret that I did it. But the story I was starting to tell was that sometime after that, when I started dating Chasten, maybe, I don't know, some months
Did he
after
jump on that immediately? Was he like, oh, hell yeah? Did he like slide into the DMs? He was like, he's, you know what I mean? Like, was that quick afterwards?
No, I found him. Well, it was Hinge, the dating app.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't Grindr.
Grindr's for Republicans.
I know everybody thinks
we do need to talk about why every time the RNC happens, Grindr explodes. I'm just saying. Out him.
Seems like a lot of letters need to be written.
They don't serve.
So anyway, I met him, fall in love, start dating, and this I run into this woman I know, I think in the lobby of the County City building. I'm walking into work. I know she's a little more conservative. And she comes up and she says, I ran into your friend and he's wonderful.
Oh.
And it was one of those moments, right, where like, I think it was very important that the thing to recognize is like, for her, she was signaling something pretty big for her.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know exactly, but I can guess like how she thought about and talked about gay people probably all her life. But she knew me, she met him, he's wonderful. Like,
Yeah.
Right? Versus if I like treated her to a lecture on the difference between a friend and a partner, right?
Yeah.
That would have pushed her right back into the arms of these people who don't want anything good for like me. So what I take from that is this broader process that needs to go on, where we find people, and as passionate as we are and as right as I believe we are about the big things, even though I'm open to the fact that we may not be right about everything, we're not telling people that they are bigoted or racist or whatever, because they don't already start out in the same place that we are. Right? There has to be that process of kind of inviting people to look at things the way we look at things, versus commanding them to. And I think that is something that in the culture of my party has been especially challenging in the last like 10 or 20 years. But that we need to work through, because again, politics is about persuasion. It's about finding people where they are. It's about how they feel about themselves. I think there is a desire for belonging that is not just something liberals care about. I actually think the loss of belonging that happens in a town like where I grew up, when you lose your auto job and the Workforce Development Agency comes along and says, good news, I found a job that you can get qualified for based on your education, and it pays just as much, and you're going to be a nursing assistant.
Yeah.
And like, maybe that's a perfectly good job, obviously, but like, if the last 20 years of your life have been about not just the way you make your money, but the way you see where you fit in the world, is about what you know how to do in a machine shop. And some well-intentioned person with a clipboard is telling you, guess what? Now you get to be a nursing assistant.
Yeah.
Like, that is not finding people where they are. That's not because something has happened to their sense of belonging.
Mm-hmm.
And, we really care about belonging, maybe to a fault, but like, we try to make sure that there's room for everybody at the table in society and in different processes and in our politics. But if we really take that seriously, like if we really live up to that, that means recognizing that some crises around belonging are a big part of why some people, many of whom voted for the other guy this last time, are really prepared to just burn the house down and think that's no worse than any of the other things that could happen.
Mm-hmm. So including them in those groups of people that you are looking out for.
Yeah, and meaning it.
And meaning,
like,
yeah.
You can't
Not
really
doing it
be
in a
persuasive about
patronizing
them
way.
unless you actually mean it.
Yeah. I think that there's a really beautiful story about giving that woman grace.
Yeah.
And choosing maybe to not correct her and understanding. Now, you had the benefit of having a relationship with that person and understanding maybe how difficult it was for her to even come there.
Mm-hmm.
And you both had this amazing experience where you connected with people as individuals before you knew things about each other that might create some separation, which is kind of a really awesome thing about the human spirit. It's like, once I kind of know who you are as a dude or a chick, and like these other things in your life, all of a sudden I have a little bit more empathy for or understanding, or at least want to understand because I like who you are. But what a great experiment. How do we get to that point? And how do Republicans also do that? Like, this is something I've been... every time I go on like a really conservative podcast, the trans discussion comes up, and then like, what I've tried to explain, at least from my perspective, is like both sides are trying to protect kids. They just think the protection is different, right? And I imagine like the most benevolent part of the left is going, hey, these kids might be suffering in the wrong body, and their parents might not create a space for them at home where they can like be their true selves. And then parents on the right go, hey, I don't want to be in second place for the decisions made about my kid to the school. Like, I don't even know the principal. Why are they like, and I have empathy for that too. Yeah. And how do we get to a point where we're not constantly trying to dunk on one another? Right. And we're actually trying to, like you said, meet people where they are. Yeah. Like, well, how do we do that as a country in general?
Like the key word there is the empathy, right? The like understanding. So I think you put it really well, like having empathy for parents or students who are in that position, which is terrifying, of belonging to one of the most tiny and kind of harassed minorities that there is in the country, but also empathy for people who sincerely want to make sure that sports are safe and fair, and want to make sure that they have the most important say in what's happening in deciding what's best for their children. Like that, these are like very human things that, if you strip away all the layers of the politics of it, come from a place of very understandable concern and like humanity, right?
Yeah. There is humanity in both positions. And I think that's lost in the dialogue sometimes.
Yes, which brings us in some ways back to the algorithms. So I think a big part of the answer to your question is offline. There have to be spaces that are offline, or at least that are not like shaped by algorithms, where these conversations happen. Because to your point, if all I know about you is that you're, some random account on Twitter shitposting like something I really care about, then I'm going to assume you're an asshole. But if I know you, and then we discover like we view these things in different ways, we're away from the keyboards, right? Yeah. Then it's a completely different conversation. And I really worry, and sometimes this is coded as like a conservative worry, but I think liberals should be just as worried about it, about things like neighborhoods and faith communities and other sources of belonging and meaning that overlap the different political commitments that we have. Because it's in those spaces. I mean, again, I think back to the military. Like, if I was getting in a vehicle to go outside the wire, like the other people getting in the vehicle with me definitely did not care if I was a Republican or a Democrat, or like what country my dad immigrated from, or if I was going home to a girlfriend. I'm really excited for the next hour. We're going to talk about Malta, by the way.
I cannot wait.
Like all they wanted to know, obviously, was that they could trust me to do my job. Same thing, vice versa, because we're trusting each other with our lives
100%.
every time we went outside the wire.
Yeah.
And to be clear, I was not into like a combat or maneuver. My job was just to like drive them safely to where they needed to go. But that could be scary.
That does have risk.
Not that everybody should be in the military, but like everybody should be in environments where people as people first. We start this way. We grow up, families are like this.
Mm-hmm. Sports, a lot of times.
Sport, absolutely.
Team sports is like this. I agree with you 1,000,000%.
You know how somebody handles themselves in a tough situation, and then you find out like how each of you comes at something. Right? That's just such a more honest and human and ultimately respectful and decent process of encounter.
It's amazing how understanding we can be when we have that type of relationship built first.
Yeah.